A billionaire sat alone on his birthday, wearing clothes from a thrift store, waiting for a woman who would humiliate him in seconds. But the stranger who saved that night wasn't the one he came to meet. She was the one pouring coffee behind the counter, barely making rent, raising a daughter on hope and burnt toast. What started with a slice of cake and a single candle became something neither of them expected. This is the story of two people who had nothing, everything, and finally, each other. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and regret. Ethan Cole sat at a corner table near the window, fingers laced together on the scratched wood surface, staring at the door like it might offer him some kind of mercy. It didn't. The door just kept swinging open, letting in blasts of cold February air and people who weren't her. He checked his phone. 7:47 p.m. She was 17 minutes late. He told himself it was traffic, weather, something reasonable, but the knot in his stomach knew better. The kind of knowing that comes from years of being disappointed by people who smile too wide and mean nothing by it. Ethan adjusted the collar of his plain gray sweater, purchased specifically for tonight from a department store he'd never set foot in before. The boots on his feet were scuffed, borrowed from his building's maintenance guy after an awkward conversation that involved $20 and a promise not to ask questions. He'd left the watch at home. The car, too. Tonight, he wasn't Ethan Cole, CEO of Cole Enterprises, Forbes 30 under 40, single father to a 6-year-old who asked too many questions about why mommy never called. Tonight, he was just Ethan, and Ethan was about to get stood up. The woman across the room, mid-30s, blonde, wearing too much perfume, kept glancing at him, not with interest, with something closer to pity. He looked away. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Running late. Be there soon, promise. The emoji felt like a lie, but he responded anyway. Ethan, no problem. Take your time. Another lie. He ordered a black coffee he didn't want, just to justify taking up the table. The waitress, young, distracted, chewing gum like it owed her money, brought it over without making eye contact. Anything else? No, thanks. She walked away and Ethan sat there, alone with the coffee and the weight of 32 years that felt heavier than they should. He thought about leaving. He didn't. At 8:03, the door opened again. This time, she walked in. Ethan recognized her immediately from the profile picture. Same sharp cheekbones, same confident smile, same energy that radiated, I'm doing you a favor by being here. She wore a designer coat, heels that clicked against the tile floor like a countdown, and an expression that shifted the moment she saw him. The smile vanished. She stopped 3 feet from the table, looked him up and down, and did not sit. Ethan? He stood, extended a hand. Yeah, hi. You must be... Is this a joke? Her voice was loud enough that the couple 2 tables over looked up from their phones. Ethan's hand hung in the air for a beat too long before he lowered it. I'm sorry? She laughed. Not the kind that means something's funny, the kind that cuts. I saw your profile, Ethan. You said you were successful. You said you worked in business. She gestured at him, head to toe, like he was evidence in a case she'd already won. This is what successful looks like? The cafe went quiet in that specific way that meant everyone was listening but pretending not to. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Let me guess. You're between jobs? Or maybe you're one of those guys who thinks ambition is a personality trait? She tilted her head, inspecting him like a bad painting. Honestly, I should have known. The vague answers, the dodgy photos. You're probably still living with your parents. I have a daughter, Ethan said quietly. Her eyes widened. Oh, perfect. A single dad with no money and bad boots. Exactly what I signed up for. She turned on her heel, coat swirling dramatically, and walked toward the door. Ethan stood there, frozen, his face burning. Someone coughed. The door swung shut behind her, and the cold rushed in to fill the space she left. Ethan sat back down. The coffee had gone cold. He drank it anyway. He pulled out his phone, stared at the screen, then set it face down on the table. No one was going to call. No one was coming. It was just him and the hum of the espresso machine and the faint sound of silverware scraping plates. He exhaled slowly, leaning back in the chair, and without meaning to, he whispered, "Happy birthday to me." The words fell into the air and disappeared, or so he thought. Behind the counter, standing near the register with a rag in her hand and flour on her jeans, Mia Turner heard him. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the cafe was small, and the woman's voice had been sharp enough to cut through steel. Mia had watched the whole thing from the corner of her eye while pretending to wipe down the espresso machine for the third time that hour. She knew that look on his face. The one that said, "I'm fine. I'm always fine." She'd worn it herself more times than she could count. Mia glanced at the clock. 8:12 p.m. Her shift didn't end until 10, but the cafe was nearly empty now. Just Ethan, the pitying blonde woman who'd finally left, and an older man in the corner working on a crossword puzzle like the world wasn't happening around him. She wiped her hands on her apron, hesitated, then walked to the back. The storage room smelled like sugar and cardboard. She moved past the shelves stacked with supplies and opened the small fridge in the corner. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a single slice of chocolate cake, left over from a birthday order that never got picked up. The owner had told her to toss it yesterday. She hadn't. Mia grabbed the slice, pulled a birthday candle from the drawer by the sink, and stuck it in the center of the frosting. She lit it with the long lighter they used for the gas stove, watched the flame flicker, and carried it out. Ethan didn't notice her approaching until she set the plate down in front of him. He looked up, startled. "What's this?" "Birthday cake," Mia said simply. He blinked. "How did you—" "You said it, out loud." She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, suddenly aware that she probably looked like a mess. Flour on her jeans, coffee stains on her shirt, exhaustion written into every line of her face. "I figured, I don't know, nobody should spend their birthday alone." Ethan stared at the cake like it was a puzzle he didn't know how to solve. "I didn't order this." "I know. I can't. It's free," Mia said. "Trust me, it was going in the trash anyway." That wasn't entirely true, but it felt kinder than the alternative. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. She wasn't polished like the woman who'd just humiliated him. She didn't have perfect hair or a rehearsed smile, but there was something in her eyes, something steady. "Thank you," he said quietly. Mia nodded, stepped back, and was about to return to the counter when he spoke again. "Do you want to sit?" She hesitated. The owner didn't like them sitting with customers. But the owner also wasn't here, and the cafe was dead, and honestly, Mia was too tired to care about rules that didn't pay her rent. "Yeah," she said. "Sure." She pulled out the chair across from him and sat. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The candle burned between them, wax dripping slowly onto the frosting. "You're supposed to make a wish," Mia said. Ethan smiled faintly. "I don't really believe in that stuff." Neither do I," Mia admitted. "But it's your birthday. Might as well pretend." He considered that, then leaned forward and blew out the candle. The smoke curled upward, disappearing into the warm air. "What'd you wish for?" Mia asked. "If I tell you, it won't come true." "That's the rule, huh?" "That's the rule." Mia smiled despite herself. "Fair enough." Ethan picked up the fork, cut into the cake, and took a bite. It was dry, definitely a day too old, but he didn't say anything. He just chewed, swallowed, and nodded. "It's good." "You're a terrible liar." He laughed, actually laughed. The sound surprised both of them. "Okay, it's not good," he admitted, "but it's better than sitting here alone." Mia leaned back in her chair, arms crossed loosely. "That woman earlier, she seemed nice." Ethan snorted. "Yeah, real peach." "What happened?" "She didn't like my boots." Mia glanced under the table. "They're not that bad. They're borrowed." "Ah." Silence settled again, but this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt manageable. "Why'd you dress down?" Mia asked after a moment. Ethan looked at her, surprised. "What makes you think I dressed down?" "Because nobody borrows boots for a first date unless they're trying to hide something." He didn't answer right away, just turned the fork over in his hand, studying the cheap metal like it held answers. "I wanted to see if someone could like me for me," he said finally. "Not the stuff, not the job, just me." Mia nodded slowly. "And?" Turns out the answer's no. Or, Mia said, turns out she was an asshole. Ethan looked up, startled, and then he laughed again, harder this time, the kind of laugh that shakes your shoulders and makes your eyes water. Yeah, he said, wiping his eyes. Yeah, maybe that's it. Mia smiled. They sat there for a while longer, trading small pieces of conversation that didn't mean much but somehow meant everything. Mia told him about her daughter, Rosie, age 5, obsessed with crayons, and convinced that clouds were made of marshmallows. Ethan told her about his daughter, too, Lily, 6, who asked questions like, "Why is the sky blue?" and wouldn't accept "because it is" as an answer. He didn't mention the nannies or the private school or the penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He didn't mention the board meetings or the stock options or the fact that his net worth had more zeros than most people would see in a lifetime. He just talked about Lily, and for the first time in months, maybe years, he felt like himself. "Do you do this a lot?" Ethan asked eventually. "Do what?" "Bring cake to sad strangers." Mia shook her head. "First time, actually." "Why me?" She thought about that. "I don't know. You looked like you needed it." "I did," Ethan said softly. "Thank you." Mia stood, brushing crumbs off her apron. "I should get back to work before my boss materializes out of thin air and fires me. Does that happen often?" "You'd be surprised." Ethan stood too, pulling out his wallet. "Don't," Mia said quickly. "It's on me." "You just said it was free." "It is. But if you leave money, I have to ring it up, and then it's a whole thing." Ethan smiled, tucked the wallet away. "All right. But next time, I'm paying." "Next time?" He paused, realizing what he'd said. "I mean, if I come back?" "Do you want to come back?" "Yeah," Ethan said, surprised by how much he meant it. "I think I do." Mia smiled, a real one this time, not the customer service version she wore like armor. "Then I'll save you a table." Ethan left the cafe at 8:47 p.m., stepping out into the cold with his hands in his pockets and his chest feeling lighter than it had in years. He didn't know her last name. He didn't know if she was single or what her favorite color was or whether she liked dogs or cats or neither. But he knew that for 17 minutes, sitting across from a woman who brought him terrible cake and asked nothing of him, he'd felt seen. And that was enough. Behind him, through the window, Mia watched him walk away. She told herself it didn't matter. He was just another customer, another lonely person on another cold night. She'd probably never see him again, but as she turned back to the counter, she found herself hoping she was wrong. 3 days later, Ethan came back. He didn't plan to. He told himself he was just in the neighborhood, which was absurd, because his office was 12 miles away and he had no reason to be anywhere near this part of town. But there he was, standing outside the cafe at 6:30 p.m., staring at the door like it might judge him. It didn't. He went inside. The place was busier this time. A few tables occupied, the espresso machine hissing, the smell of fresh bread mixing with coffee. Mia was behind the counter, hair tied back, taking an order from a woman in a business suit who kept changing her mind about milk alternatives. She didn't see him at first. Ethan sat at the same table by the window, hands folded, waiting. When Mia finally turned around, her eyes landed on him, and for a split second, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or something softer. She finished with the business suit woman, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked over. "You came back?" "I did." "Why?" Ethan shrugged. "The cake was terrible." Mia laughed. "Then you're a glutton for punishment." "Apparently." She pulled out the chair across from him and sat without asking. The cafe was busy enough that no one would notice, or care. "So," Mia said, leaning forward slightly, "what's the real reason?" Ethan hesitated. The truth felt too big to say out loud. "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you. Because that night was the first time in years I didn't feel like I was performing. Because I don't know your last name and it's driving me crazy." Instead, he said, "I wanted to see if you were real." Mia raised an eyebrow. "As opposed to what? A very convincing hallucination?" "Something like that." She smiled, and Ethan felt something in his chest shift. They talked for 20 minutes before Mia had to get back to work. And then Ethan stayed for another hour, nursing a coffee and pretending to read emails on his phone while really just watching her move through the cafe, refilling mugs, clearing tables, laughing at something the cook said through the kitchen window. When he finally left, he didn't say goodbye. He just caught her eye across the room, and she nodded. He'd be back. They both knew it. Boom. The pattern continued. Every few days, Ethan would show up. Sometimes in the evening, sometimes late afternoon. Never at the same time. Never for very long. Just enough to sit, talk, exist in her orbit for a while. Mia started saving him pastries that didn't sell. A croissant here, a muffin there. She never made a big deal out of it, just set them down on his table with a quick "don't let these go to waste" before walking away. Ethan never asked why. He just ate them, left cash in the tip jar when she wasn't looking, and came back. They learned things about each other in fragments. Mia grew up in foster care, bounced between homes until she aged out at 18, worked 3 jobs to put herself through community college, then dropped out when she got pregnant. Rosie's father left before the ink dried on the birth certificate. Ethan told her about losing his parents in a car accident when he was 19, about building his company from nothing because he didn't know what else to do with the grief, about Lily's mother, his ex-wife, who decided motherhood wasn't for her and signed away custody without a fight. He still didn't tell her about the money, and Mia didn't ask. She figured everyone had secrets. Hers were just harder to hide. It happened on a Saturday. Ethan wasn't supposed to be there. He told himself he'd stay home, spend the day with Lily, maybe take her to the park. But Lily was at a birthday party until 4, and the apartment felt too quiet. And before he knew it, he was pulling up outside the cafe in his car. Not the usual black sedan with the driver, but the old Jeep he kept in the garage and never drove. He walked in, expecting to see Mia behind the counter. She wasn't there. The girl working the register, young, nose ring, bored expression, glanced up. "Help you?" Is Mia working today?" The girl shrugged. "She's on break, probably out back." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks." He walked through the cafe, past the tables, past the kitchen, and out the back door into the narrow alley behind the building. Mia was sitting on an overturned crate, phone pressed to her ear, face tight with stress. "I know," she was saying. "I know, I'm sorry. I'll have it by the 15th, I promise." A pause. "No, please don't." Her voice cracked. "Please, just give me 2 more weeks." Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay. Yeah. Thank you." She hung up, dropped the phone into her lap, and pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway. He should leave, he knew that. This was private, personal, none of his business. But before he could move, Mia looked up and saw him. Her face went blank. "How long have you been standing there?" I was looking for you." She stood quickly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm fine." "Mia?" "I said I'm fine." Her voice was sharp now, defensive. "I'm on break. I'll be back inside in 5 minutes." Ethan took a step forward. "What's going on?" "Nothing." That didn't sound like nothing. "It's none of your business, Ethan." The words landed harder than she meant them to. She saw it in his face, the way he flinched, just slightly, before his expression smoothed over into something carefully neutral. "You're right," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." He turned to leave. "Wait." Ethan stopped. Mia exhaled, running a hand through her hair. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have snapped at you." "It's okay." "It's not." She sank back down onto the crate, suddenly exhausted. "My landlord's raising the rent. Again. And I'm already behind, and I don't—" She shook her head. "I don't know how I'm going to make it work." Ethan's chest tightened. He thought about the watch sitting in his dresser drawer at home, the one worth more than most people made in a year. He thought about the checkbook in his jacket pocket, the accounts with balances that didn't mean anything because there was always more. He could fix this. Right now. 1 sentence, 1 transfer. But he didn't, because he knew that the moment he did, everything would change. She'd look at him differently. She'd pull away. She'd stop seeing him and start seeing the money, the power, the version of Ethan Cole that everyone else saw. So instead, he sat down on the crate next to her. "How much do you need?" Mia laughed bitterly. More than I have. Let me help. You can't. Maybe I can. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment he thought she might say yes. But then she shook her head. I appreciate it, Ethan, I do. But I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I'll figure it out. You don't have to do it alone. Yeah, Mia said softly. I do. They sat there in the alley side by side while the city hummed around them, and Ethan realized with a sinking feeling in his gut that he was falling for someone who would never let him catch her. The rent didn't get easier. Mia picked up extra shifts, doubles on Tuesdays, closing on Fridays, opening on Saturdays, even though it meant waking Rosie up at 5 in the morning and dropping her at a neighbor's apartment that smelled like cat litter and microwaved fish. Mrs. Chen didn't charge much for babysitting, but she also didn't do much beyond keeping Rosie alive and parked in front of a television that only got 3 channels. Mia told herself it was temporary. Everything was always temporary. Ethan kept coming back to the cafe, though less frequently now. Mia noticed the gaps. 4 days, then 6, then almost 2 weeks where she didn't see him at all. She told herself it didn't matter. He was just a customer, a lonely guy who liked stale pastries and bad coffee. But when he finally walked through the door on a Thursday afternoon, something in her chest loosened. He looked different, tired maybe. His hair was messier than usual, and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. He sat at his usual table without ordering. Mia brought him coffee anyway. You look like hell, she said, setting the mug down. Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel special. I'm serious, are you okay? Ethan wrapped his hands around the mug but didn't drink. Lily's been sick. Nothing major, just a cold that won't quit. But she's miserable, and I'm... He trailed off, shaking his head. I don't know, I'm not good at this. At what? Being enough. The words hung there, raw and unguarded. Mia pulled out the chair across from him and sat. The cafe was quiet, mid-afternoon lull, only 2 other customers, both absorbed in their laptops. You're doing better than you think, she said. How would you know? Because you're here, beating yourself up about it. Bad parents don't do that. Ethan looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. Is that what you tell yourself? Every single day? They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared exhaustion settling between them like a third person at the table. Rosie asked about you, Mia said finally. Ethan's eyebrows lifted. She doesn't even know me. She remembers the birthday cake, keeps asking when the sad man is coming back. The sad man. Her words, not mine. Ethan laughed quietly. Well, she's not wrong. You're not that sad. I'm sad enough. Mia studied him, the way he held himself, shoulders tight, jaw set like he was bracing for impact. She recognized it because she did the same thing. The world taught you early that if you didn't hold yourself together, no one else would. You should bring Lily sometime, Mia said. Rosie could use a friend her age. Ethan looked surprised. You want me to bring my kid to your workplace? Why not? It's not like this place has standards. He smiled despite himself. I'll think about it. You do that. Mia stood, smoothing her apron. She had tables to clear, dishes to wash, a never-ending list of small tasks that kept her from thinking too hard about the stack of bills on her kitchen counter. But before she could walk away, Ethan spoke. Mia? She turned. Thank you. For what? For not asking questions. She nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Some things were easier left unsaid. 2 weeks later, Mia's world tilted sideways. It started with a phone call at 7 in the morning, the landlord's voice, clipped and final, informing her that if she didn't have the rent by the end of the week, she'd be out. No extensions, no exceptions. Then Rosie woke up with a fever. Then the cafe's espresso machine broke, and Mia's boss blamed her even though she'd been the one telling him for months that it needed servicing. By noon, she was standing in the storage room, hands pressed flat against the metal shelf, trying to remember how to breathe. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years, but she wanted to. The door creaked open behind her. Mia? It was Danielle, the other waitress, early 20s, college student, someone who still believed things would work out if you just tried hard enough. I'm fine, Mia said without turning around. You don't look fine. I said I'm fine. Danielle hesitated, then stepped closer. Look, I don't know what's going on, but if you need to talk, I don't. Okay? Danielle backed toward the door. But there's a guy out front asking for you. Mia's stomach dropped. Who? I don't know. Tall, dark hair, looks like he just stepped out of a catalog for people who have their life together. Ethan. Mia closed her eyes. Of course it was Ethan. Of course he'd show up on the one day she couldn't pretend to have her shit together. Tell him I'm busy. I tried. He's weirdly persistent. Mia exhaled, wiped her hands on her jeans, and walked out of the storage room. Ethan was standing by the counter, hands in his pockets, looking out of place in a way that had nothing to do with his clothes and everything to do with the fact that he always seemed too calm, too steady, like the world couldn't touch him. When he saw her, his expression shifted. What happened? Nothing. You're a terrible liar. I'm working, Ethan. What do you want? He flinched at the sharpness in her voice, but didn't back down. I wanted to see if you were free this weekend. For what? There's a park near my place. I thought maybe Rosie and Lily could meet. You said she could use a friend. Mia stared at him. You're asking me on a play date? I guess. Now. Is that weird? A little. Should I come back later? No. Mia rubbed her temples, feeling the headache building behind her eyes. Sorry, it's been a long day. I can see that. She almost told him, almost let the words spill out, the rent, the eviction notice, the fever, the broken machine, all of it. But she stopped herself because she'd learned a long time ago that people didn't actually want to know. They asked because it was polite, because it made them feel better. But the moment you told the truth, they disappeared. Sunday, she said instead. We can do Sunday. Ethan's face brightened. Yeah? Yeah. But if Lily's still sick, we're rescheduling. She's better, I promise. Good. They stood there for a moment, neither quite sure how to end the conversation. I should get back to work, Mia said finally. Right, yeah. Ethan pulled out his phone. Can I get your number so we can figure out details? Mia hesitated, then rattled off her number. He typed it in, saved it, and slid the phone back into his pocket. I'll text you, he said. Okay? He turned to leave, then stopped. Mia? Yeah? Whatever's going on, it's going to be okay. She didn't believe him, but she appreciated the lie. At 10. Sunday came faster than Mia expected. She woke up early, made Rosie breakfast, scrambled eggs that came out rubbery, and toast that was slightly burnt, and tried to figure out what you were supposed to wear to a casual park hangout with a guy you weren't dating but also weren't not thinking about. She settled on jeans and a sweater that didn't have stains. Progress. Rosie was vibrating with excitement, asking 1,000 questions Mia didn't have answers to. Is the sad man going to be there? His name is Ethan. Is he still sad? I don't know, baby. Does he have a dog? I don't think so. Can we get a dog? Absolutely not. They took the bus across town. Rosie pressed against the window, narrating everything she saw like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. Mia watched her and felt the familiar ache of guilt, the kind that came from knowing your kid deserved better and not being able to give it to her. The park was nicer than Mia expected. Clean, well-maintained, the kind of place where people brought fancy strollers and dogs with pedigrees. Ethan was already there, sitting on a bench near the playground with Lily beside him. The little girl had dark hair like her father, pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was clutching a book in her lap like it was a life raft. Ethan stood when he saw them, waving. Mia waved back, suddenly aware of how out of place she felt. Hi, Ethan said as they approached. Hi. Lily looked up from her book, studying Rosie with the kind of intense scrutiny only kids could pull off. I'm Rosie, Rosie announced. I'm 5 3/4. I'm Lily. I'm 6.5. Do you like crayons? Lily considered this very seriously. Sometimes. Do you want to play? Okay. Just like that, they were off, running toward the swings like they'd known each other their whole lives. Mia sat down on the bench, and Ethan sat beside her. That was easy, he said. Kids are like that. They don't overcomplicate things. Unlike us. They watched the girls in silence for a while, Rosie was trying to show Lily how to pump her legs on the swing. Lily was explaining very patiently why Rosie's technique was aerodynamically inefficient. "She's a lot like you," Mia said. "Who?" "Lily, the serious thing, the way she thinks everything through." Ethan smiled. "She gets that from her mother." It was the first time he'd mentioned her without flinching. "Do you ever hear from her?" Mia asked carefully. "No, she signed away custody when Lily was 2. Haven't seen her since." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We're better off." Mia understood that. Some absences were kinder than presents. "What about Rosie's dad?" Ethan asked. "Gone before she was born. He wanted me to get rid of her. I didn't, so he left." His loss. Mia looked at him, surprised by the fierceness in his voice. "You don't even know her." "I know she's smart and funny, and she lights up when she talks about crayons. That's enough." Something in Mia's chest cracked open, just a little. They sat there side by side watching their daughters play, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Mia didn't feel alone. It became a routine. Every Sunday they met at the park. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence while Lily and Rosie invented elaborate games that made no sense to anyone but them. Ethan started bringing snacks, juice boxes, crackers, fruit that was always cut into perfect pieces. Mia didn't ask where he got the time to do that. She just accepted it, the same way she accepted the small gifts that started appearing. A box of crayons left on her doorstep with a note. For Rosie. A coloring book the following week. A stuffed animal that Rosie named Mr. Whiskers, even though it was clearly a bear. Mia wanted to be annoyed. She didn't need charity. Didn't need some guy she barely knew trying to fix her life with Target receipts. But Rosie's face when she found the crayon stopped her from saying anything, so she let it go. And in return, she started leaving things for Ethan at the cafe. A coffee, black, waiting at his table when he arrived. A pastry she'd saved from the morning rush. Once, a terrible drawing Rosie had made of the sad man who isn't sad anymore, which Ethan folded carefully and put in his wallet. It wasn't much, but it was something. The shift happened on a Thursday in late March. Mia was closing the cafe, wiping down tables and counting register receipts when her phone buzzed. "Ethan, are you busy tomorrow night?" Mia, define busy. Ethan, I have a work thing, black tie, very boring. My date just canceled and I really don't want to go alone. Mia stared at the message. A work thing, black tie. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, Mia, I don't have anything to wear to a black tie event. Ethan, I can fix that. Mia, that sounds vaguely ominous. Ethan, trust me? She shouldn't, she knew that. Trusting people was how you got hurt. But against every instinct she'd honed over 30 years, she typed, Mia, fine. But if this is a pretty woman situation, I'm out. Ethan, no prostitution, I promise. Mia, then we're good. The next afternoon, a package arrived at her apartment. Inside was a dress. Simple, black, elegant, in a way that made Mia's secondhand wardrobe look like a costume. There was a note attached, no pressure, but I'd really like you to come. Mia held the dress up to the light, fabric soft and expensive between her fingers. She should return it. She didn't. The event was at a hotel downtown, the kind with valets and marble floors and chandeliers that cost more than Mia made in a year. Ethan met her outside, and when he saw her, he stopped walking. What? Mia asked, suddenly self-conscious. Nothing. You look amazing. The dress does all the work. I'm not talking about the dress. Mia's face went warm. We should go in before I lose my nerve. Inside, the ballroom was full of people who looked like they belonged in magazines. Women in gowns that probably had names. Men in suits that fit like they were born wearing them. Mia felt like an imposter. Ethan must have sensed it because he leaned close and whispered, These people are incredibly boring, I promise. That's not reassuring. Stick with me. We'll make fun of them quietly. Despite herself, Mia smiled. They found a table near the back. Ethan introduced her to a few people. Colleagues, he said. though their titles sounded vaguely impressive and mostly meaningless. Mia nodded, smiled, and tried not to look as out of place as she felt. Dinner was fine, conversation was fine, everything was fine in that polite, surface-level way that made Mia's skin itch. But then, during dessert, a woman approached the table. She was tall, blonde, beautiful in the way that required effort and money. She looked at Ethan with the kind of familiarity that set off alarm bells in Mia's head. "Ethan," the woman said, her voice dripping with something that might have been warmth but felt like a threat. "I didn't know you were bringing someone." "Victoria." Ethan's voice was carefully neutral. "This is Mia." Victoria's eyes slid over Mia, cataloging and dismissing in one smooth motion. "Charmed," she said, though nothing about her tone suggested she meant it. "How do you two know each other?" "We're friends," Mia said before Ethan could answer. "Friends." Victoria repeated the word like it was a punchline. "How sweet." She turned back to Ethan. "We should catch up later. There's a deal I'd love to discuss." "I'm good, thanks." Victoria's smile tightened. "Of course. Well, enjoy your evening." She walked away, heels clicking against the marble floor. Mia waited until she was out of earshot. "Who the hell was that?" "A mistake I made a long time ago." "She seemed nice." "She's not." "I gathered." Ethan looked at her, something apologetic in his expression. "I'm sorry. I should have warned you there'd be people like her here." "People like what?" "People who think they're better than everyone else." "So, everyone here?" Ethan laughed, surprised. "Pretty much." Mia leaned back in her chair, surveying the room. "Why do you come to these things if you hate them?" "I don't hate them." "You look miserable." "It's part of the job." "What job?" Ethan hesitated, and Mia saw it. The split-second calculation, the decision to deflect. "I work in business," he said vaguely. It was the same non-answer he always gave. Mia didn't push, but she filed it away. Another piece of a puzzle she didn't quite understand. They left before the speeches ended, slipping out a side door and into the cool night air. "I owe you," Ethan said as they walked toward the valet stand. "For what?" "Surviving that." "Barely." He smiled, and they stood there for a moment, the city humming around them. "Can I take you home?" Ethan asked. Mia almost said yes, but then she thought about her apartment, the peeling paint, the broken heating, the stack of overdue bills on the kitchen counter, and something in her recoiled. "I'll take the bus," she said. "Mia, it's late." "I'll be fine." "Let me at least get you a cab." "I said I'm fine." Her voice came out sharper than she intended, and she saw him pull back, walls going up. "Okay," Ethan said quietly. "I'll see you Sunday?" "Yeah, Sunday." He nodded, and then he was gone, disappearing into the night in a car that probably cost more than Mia would make in 5 years. She stood there alone, wrapped in a borrowed dress, and wondered why doing the right thing always felt so much like losing. Sunday came, but Ethan didn't. Mia waited at the park with Rosie for 40 minutes, watching her daughter's face shift from excitement to confusion to something that looked too much like disappointment for a 5-year-old to carry. "Maybe they're just late," Rosie said, swinging her legs from the bench. "Maybe." But Mia's phone stayed silent. No text, no call, nothing. She told herself it didn't matter, that she'd known better than to expect anything. People left. That's what they did. It was easier to accept it than to keep hoping they'd stay. "Come on, baby," Mia said finally, standing and brushing off her jeans. "Let's go home." "But what about Lily?" "I don't think they're coming today." Rosie's face crumpled. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." "Then why?" "Sometimes people just don't show up. It's not about you." But Rosie was 5, and the world didn't work that way when you were 5. Everything was about you. Every broken promise, every missed plan, every absence that didn't come with an explanation. They took the bus home in silence, Rosie pressed against the window, not narrating this time, just watching the city blur past with eyes that looked too old. Mia hated it, hated that she'd let this happen, hated that she'd let Ethan in far enough to hurt them when he left. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? Him leaving. She'd seen the signs, the vague answers, the careful deflections. The way he never quite let her see all of him. People who hid that much always had a reason. And the reason was never good. Back at the apartment, Mia made dinner, spaghetti with sauce from a jar, and tried to pretend everything was fine. Rosie picked at her food, asking questions Mia couldn't answer. "Do you think Lily misses me?" "I'm sure she does." "Then why didn't they come?" "I don't know, baby." "Are we going to see them again?" Mia set down her fork. "I don't know." Rosie looked at her plate, twirling pasta around her fork without eating it. "I liked having a friend." "I know. I don't have very many." The words landed like a punch. Mia reached across the table, covering Rosie's small hand with hers. "You're going to have so many friends, Rosie. So many people are going to love you." "Promise?" Mia wanted to. Wanted to promise her daughter that life would be kind, that people would stay, that the world wouldn't break her heart over and over until she learned to stop expecting anything at all. But she'd learned a long time ago that promises were just pretty lies. "I promise I'll always be here," Mia said instead. "That's the only promise I can make." Rosie nodded, and they finished dinner in silence. That night, after Rosie was asleep, Mia sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her phone. No messages. She typed out a text 3 different times and deleted it each time. What was she supposed to say? "Why didn't you show up?" "Too needy. Is everything okay?" "Too concerned." "Fuck you for making my daughter cry?" "Too honest." In the end, she said nothing. She turned off the light, lay down, and stared at the ceiling until sleep came in pieces. The next morning, she woke up to 17 missed calls, all from the same number. Ethan. Her stomach dropped. She listened to the voicemails in order, her hand pressed against her mouth. The first one was frantic. "Mia, I'm so sorry. Lily's in the hospital. I didn't have time to call. Please, if you get this, I'm sorry." The second one was worse. His voice cracked halfway through. "They think it's appendicitis. She's in surgery now. A long pause. "I'm really scared." The third one was quieter, defeated. "I know I messed up. I should have texted. I forgot everything except getting her to the emergency room. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The rest were variations of the same thing. Apologies, updates. The sound of a man who was barely holding it together. The last one had come in at 3 a.m. "She's okay. Surgery went fine. She's sleeping now. I wanted you to know. I'm sorry I scared you. I'm sorry I didn't show up. I'm sorry for—" He exhaled, long and shaky. "I'm just sorry." Mia sat on the edge of the bed, phone clutched in her hand, feeling like the worst person in the world. She'd spent the last 24 hours angry at him for something that wasn't his fault. She called him back. He answered on the first ring. "Mia." His voice was raw, scraped clean of anything resembling composure. "I just got your messages," she said. "Is Lily okay?" Yeah, they got it in time. She's going to be fine." "Where are you?" "St. Mary's, 4th floor. I'm coming." "You don't have to—" "I'm coming." She hung up before he could argue. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch Rosie for a few hours. No questions asked, bless her. And Mia took 2 buses and a train to get to the hospital. She found Ethan in the waiting area outside the pediatric ward, slumped in a plastic chair that looked like it had been designed to cause maximum discomfort. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair a mess, and there were dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. He didn't see her at first. Mia stopped a few feet away, suddenly unsure. Then he looked up, and his entire face crumpled. "Mia." She crossed the distance between them and did something she'd never done before. She pulled him into a hug. He went rigid for half a second, like he'd forgotten what comfort felt like. And then he wrapped his arms around her and held on like she was the only thing keeping him upright. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her shoulder. "I'm so sorry." "Stop apologizing." "I should have called. You were busy keeping your daughter alive. I think you get a pass." He laughed, a broken, desperate sound, and pulled back, wiping his eyes with the heel of his hand. "She was so scared," he said. "She kept asking for me, and I couldn't do anything except hold her hand and tell her it was going to be okay." "It is okay. She's okay." "I know, He shook his head. "I hate feeling helpless." Mia sat down in the chair next to him. "Welcome to parenting." That got a real laugh out of him, small and tired but real. They sat there for a while, not talking, just existing in the fluorescent-lit limbo of hospital waiting rooms. Eventually, a nurse came out and told Ethan he could see Lily. "Do you want to come?" he asked Mia. "Are you sure?" "Yeah." They walked down the hallway together, past rooms filled with the soft beeping of machines and the murmur of worried voices. Lily was in a bed by the window, small and pale against the white sheets. She was awake, staring at the ceiling with the kind of glazed expression that came from painkillers and exhaustion. When she saw Ethan, her face brightened. "Dad." "Hey, kiddo." He sat on the edge of the bed, brushing hair back from her forehead. "How are you feeling?" "Weird. The medicine makes everything floaty." "That's normal." Lily's eyes drifted to Mia, standing awkwardly near the door. "You brought Rosie's mom." "I did." "Hi, Rosie's mom." Mia smiled despite herself. "Hi, Lily. You gave your dad a pretty good scare." "I didn't mean to." Lily looked back at Ethan. "Is Rosie mad at me?" "Why would she be mad at you?" "Because we missed the park." Ethan's expression softened. "She's not mad. I promise." "Can you tell her I'm sorry?" "You can tell her yourself when you're feeling better." Lily seemed satisfied with that. She closed her eyes, drifting in and out of sleep while Ethan sat beside her, holding her hand like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. Mia watched them, something tightening in her chest. This was what love looked like when you stripped away all the noise. Just a father and his daughter, holding on to each other in a room that smelled like disinfectant and fear. After a while, Lily fell asleep, and Ethan stood carefully, tucking the blanket around her. "I should let you go," he said to Mia. "You've probably got work." "I called in sick." "You didn't have to do that." "I know." They walked back to the waiting area, and Ethan sank into the same uncomfortable chair like it was the only place he knew how to be. Mia sat beside him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yeah." "Why didn't you tell me what you do?" Ethan went very still. "What do you mean?" "At the gala, everyone there knew you. They treated you like, I don't know, like you mattered, but you always said you just work in business." He was quiet for a long time. "I wanted you to see me," he said finally. "Not the job, not the money, just me." "I do see you." "Do you?" Mia turned to face him. "You think I care what you do for a living?" "Most people do." "I'm not most people." "I know." He looked at her, something raw and unguarded in his eyes. "That's the problem." "How is that a problem?" "Because if you knew—" He stopped, shaking his head. "It doesn't matter." "It does if you keep hiding from me." "I'm not hiding." "Then what do you call it?" Ethan stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "I call it trying not to ruin the one good thing I have." The words hung between them, too big and too honest for the sterile waiting room. Mia stood too. "You think being honest with me would ruin this?" "I think once you know who I really am, you'll look at me differently. Try me." He hesitated, and for a moment, she thought he might actually do it, might tell her whatever he'd been holding back all this time. But then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and something in his expression shifted, back to the careful, controlled version of himself she'd seen at the gala. "I have to take this," he said. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I'll be right back." He walked away, phone pressed to his ear, leaving Mia standing alone in the waiting room. She sat back down, frustration simmering under her skin. What was he so afraid of? What could possibly be so terrible that he couldn't just tell her the truth? Ethan came back 10 minutes later, looking even more exhausted than before. "Everything okay?" Mia asked. "Yeah, just work." "On a Monday morning, while your daughter's in the hospital?" "It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated." He flinched. "That's not fair, isn't it?" They stared at each other, the air between them charged with everything they weren't saying. Finally, Ethan looked away. "You should go. I'll text you when Lily's discharged." "That's it?" "What do you want me to say, Mia?" "I want you to be honest with me." "I am being honest." "No, you're being careful. There's a difference." He didn't argue, just stood there, hands shoved in his pockets, looking like a man who'd forgotten how to ask for help. Mia grabbed her bag. "Tell Lily I hope she feels better." "Mia." She didn't wait to hear the rest. just walked out of the hospital and into the gray morning, feeling like she'd lost something she never actually had. The next 2 weeks were quiet. Ethan texted updates about Lily. She was healing well back home, asking about Rosie. But he didn't suggest meeting up, didn't come by the cafe. Mia told herself she was relieved. She wasn't. Rosie asked about them every day. "When can I see Lily?" became a constant refrain, one Mia didn't have an answer for. "Soon," she'd say, "when Lily's feeling better." But soon stretched into a week, then 2, and Rosie stopped asking. That hurt more than Mia wanted to admit. She threw herself into work, picking up every shift she could. The rent was still a problem. The bills were still piling up. But at least those were problems she understood. People were harder. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in late April, everything changed. Mia was walking home from the cafe, exhausted and running on 3 hours of sleep, when she saw him. Ethan. Except he wasn't the Ethan she knew. He was standing on the corner of 5th and Madison, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her annual salary, talking to a man in an equally expensive suit. A black car was parked at the curb, sleek, polished, the kind of car that had a driver. Mia stopped walking. She watched as Ethan shook the man's hand, said something that made him laugh, and then turned toward the car. That's when he saw her. Their eyes met across the street, and for a split second, everything stopped. Then Ethan's expression shifted, shock, guilt, something that looked like fear. Mia didn't wait for him to say anything. She turned and walked away. Fast. "Mia, wait!" She heard him call after her, heard footsteps behind her, but she didn't stop. "Mia, please!" He caught up to her half a block later, slightly out of breath. "Let me explain." She spun around. "Explain what? That you've been lying to me this whole time?" "I never lied." "You just didn't tell me the truth. Great defense." "Not like that." "Then what's it like, Ethan?" She gestured back toward the car. "Who are you?" He hesitated, and that hesitation told her everything. "I run a company," he said finally. "What kind of company?" "Cole Enterprises." The name didn't mean anything to her at first. Then it clicked. The logo she'd seen on buildings downtown. The name in the business section of the newspaper she sometimes skimmed while waiting for the bus. Her stomach dropped. "You're that Cole." "Yes." "You're a billionaire." "Technically, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't do that. Don't minimize it." "I wasn't trying to—" "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew you'd react like this." "Like what?" "Like I just became someone different." Mia laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You are someone different. The person I knew didn't have a driver and $1,000 suit and a company with his name on it. That's just the surface. I'm still the same person." "Are you?" She studied him, the expensive watch, the perfect haircut, the confidence that came from never having to worry about rent or bills or whether you could afford to feed your kid. "Because the person I knew wore borrowed boots and drank bad coffee and sat alone on his birthday like he had nothing." "I did have nothing," Ethan said quietly. "Not anything that mattered." "Don't do that either." "Do what?" "Act like we're the same. We're not. You were playing dress up. I was just trying to survive. That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Ethan." They stood there on the sidewalk, people streaming past them, the city indifferent to the fact that something was breaking. "I should have told you," Ethan said finally. "I know that, but I was scared." "Of what?" "Of this. Of you looking at me like I'm a stranger." "You are a stranger." Mia's voice cracked. "I don't know anything about you. Not really." "That's not true." "Isn't it? You know everything about me. You know about Rosie's dad leaving, about my shitty apartment, about how I can barely make rent. But I don't know anything about your life, your real life. Because it doesn't matter. It does to me." Ethan reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "Don't. Mia, I need to go. Can we talk about this?" "What's there to talk about? You're a billionaire who pretended to be normal. I'm an idiot who believed you." "You're not an idiot. Then what am I?" He didn't answer. Mia nodded, swallowing past the lump in her throat. "That's what I thought." She turned and walked away, and this time he didn't follow. That night, Mia cried for the first time in years. Not loud, ugly sobs, just quiet tears that slipped down her face while she sat at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of unpaid bills she couldn't afford to ignore. Rosie was asleep. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Mia pressed her palms against her eyes and tried to remember how to breathe. She'd been so stupid, so unbelievably, monumentally stupid. Of course he was rich. Of course he was hiding something. People like Ethan didn't just stumble into cafes and befriend waitresses. They didn't wear thrift store clothes and borrowed boots unless they were pretending. And she'd fallen for it. Fallen for him. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, please let me explain. She stared at the message, then turned the phone face down on the table. Another buzz. Ethan, I know I messed up, but what we had, it was real. I need you to know that. Another. Ethan, I'm not asking you to forgive me. Just let me try to make this right. Mia picked up the phone and typed a response. Mia, you can't. She sent it, then turned off her phone and went to bed. 3 days later, an envelope arrived. It was hand-delivered, left on her doorstep in the early morning before she woke up. Inside was a letter on expensive stationery, the kind that felt heavy and important in your hands. Mia almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won. She opened it. The letter was formal, typed, addressed to her and Rosie. It informed her that Rosie had been awarded a full scholarship to Westbridge Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the city. Mia's hand started shaking. At the bottom, handwritten in Ethan's familiar scrawl, was a single line. For the girl who still believes in small miracles. Mia sat down hard on the couch, the letter crumpling in her fist. He'd done this. He'd pulled strings, made calls, used his money and influence to give Rosie something Mia never could. She should be angry. She was angry. But underneath the anger was something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Because this wasn't about her. This was about Rosie. And for the first time since she'd seen Ethan on that street corner, Mia realized something. He wasn't trying to fix her. He was trying to give her daughter a chance. That didn't make the lying okay. But it made it harder to hate him. Mia folded the letter carefully, set it on the table, and stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and typed a message. Mia, we need to talk. The response came immediately. Ethan, where? Mia hesitated, then typed. Mia, the cafe. Tomorrow night, after closing. Ethan, I'll be there. She set the phone down and exhaled slowly. She didn't know what she was going to say to him, didn't know if she could forgive him, but she knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not yet. The cafe closed at 9. Mia sent Danielle home early, told her boss she'd handle cleanup alone, and spent the next hour wiping down tables that were already clean and reorganizing shelves that didn't need it. Anything to keep her hands busy. Anything to stop thinking about what she was going to say. At 9:47, the door opened. Ethan stepped inside, and Mia's first thought was that he looked terrible. Not in the polished, put-together way he'd looked on that street corner. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Hair messy, shirt wrinkled, the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. He stopped just inside the door, hands in his pockets, waiting. Mia set down the rag she'd been holding. Lock it behind you. He did, the click of the deadbolt unnaturally loud in the empty cafe. They stood there for a moment, 10 feet of tile and tension between them. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Ethan said finally. I didn't do it for you. I know. Mia crossed her arms. The scholarship. How much did that cost you? Does it matter? It does if you think you can buy your way out of this. I'm not trying to buy anything, Ethan said quietly. I'm trying to give Rosie a chance. By throwing money at her? By giving her access to opportunities she wouldn't have otherwise. And what happens when she asks why? When she wants to know how a kid from a one-bedroom apartment in the bad part of town got into a school that costs more than I make in 3 years? You tell her the truth. Which is what, exactly? That some rich guy felt sorry for us? Ethan flinched. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He took a step closer. It's me trying to do something good for someone I care about. You don't know her. I know you. The words hung in the air between them, too honest and too raw. Mia looked away. That doesn't give you the right to make decisions about her life. You're right, it doesn't. But I did it anyway because I couldn't stand watching you kill yourself trying to give her a better life when I could actually help. I didn't ask for your help. I know, that's the problem. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. You never ask for anything. You just keep grinding yourself down, working doubles, skipping meals, pretending you're fine when you're not. How would you know what I'm doing? Because I pay attention, Mia. Because I see you. She wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the sharp edge of betrayal that had kept her upright for the past 3 days. But something in his voice made it harder. Why did you lie to me? She asked quietly. I didn't lie. You hid who you were. That's the same thing. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down, elbows on the table, head in his hands. When I was 23, he said, I met a woman at a conference. She was smart, funny, beautiful. We dated for 6 months before I told her about the company, the money. He looked up at Mia. The second I did, everything changed. Suddenly she was interested in the penthouse, the car, the vacation homes. She started talking about her future, our future, like it was already decided, like I was just a checkbook with a pulse. I'm not her. I know, but I've met a lot of versions of her, people who see the money first and the person never. He leaned back in the chair. And then I met you, and for the first time in years, someone looked at me and didn't see dollar signs. You saw a sad guy in bad boots who needed cake on his birthday, and He stopped, shaking his head. I didn't want to lose that. Mia sat down across from him. So you just decided to keep lying? I kept trying to find the right time to tell you, but every time I got close, I'd remember how you looked at me in this cafe. Like I was just Ethan, not Ethan Cole, CEO, not Ethan Cole, billionaire, just Ethan. His voice dropped. And I was terrified that if you knew, you'd stop looking at me like that. You didn't give me a chance to prove you wrong. I know. You made that decision for me. I know. Mia pressed her palms flat against the table. Do you have any idea how that feels? To find out the person you've been... She stopped, the word catching in her throat. The person you've been spending time with has been playing a part this whole time? I wasn't playing a part. You were wearing borrowed boots, Ethan. Because I wanted to see if someone could like me without all the other stuff. And did it work? Mia asked, her voice harder than she meant it to be. Did you get what you wanted? Ethan looked at her, something breaking in his expression. I got more than I wanted. I got you and Rosie and Sunday mornings at the park. I got terrible coffee and worse pastries and conversations that made me feel like a person instead of a corporation. He paused. And then I ruined it because I was too scared to be honest. Mia didn't say anything, just sat there trying to untangle the knot of anger and hurt and something else she didn't want to name. I can't accept the scholarship, she said finally. Why not? Because it's too much. Because I don't want Rosie growing up thinking she needs to be saved by someone with money. It's not about saving her. It's about giving her options. Options I can't give her. So what? Ethan leaned forward. You think she cares where the opportunities come from? You think she's going to be mad that she got a good education because someone who cared about her mother pulled some strings? She's going to ask questions. Then answer them. Tell her the truth, that someone saw how hard you were working and wanted to help. And when she asks who, tell her it was me. Mia shook her head. I can't. Why not? Because accepting that scholarship means accepting you back into our lives. And I don't know if I can do that. The words landed between them like stones. Ethan sat back, his face carefully blank. Okay? Okay? If you don't want me in your life, I'll stay out of it. But the scholarship stands. That's not about me. It's about Rosie. I just said I can't accept it. And I'm telling you that you don't have a choice. It's already done. The paperwork's filed. She's enrolled for the fall semester. He stood, pushing the chair back. You can hate me all you want, Mia, but don't punish your daughter because I screwed up. That's not fair. None of this is fair. He walked toward the door, then stopped with his hand on the lock. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For lying, for hiding, for all of it. You deserved better. He unlocked the door and stepped out into the night. Mia sat alone in the empty cafe, staring at the table where they'd first sat together and tried to figure out when everything had gotten so complicated. The next morning, Mia told Rosie about the scholarship. She tried to keep it simple, just the facts, no emotion, but Rosie saw through her immediately. "Are you mad?" Rosie asked, sitting cross-legged on the couch with Mr. Whiskers clutched to her chest. "No, baby, I'm not mad." "You look mad." "I'm just tired." Rosie considered this. "Is it because of Ethan?" Mia's chest tightened. "Why would you think that?" "Because we stopped seeing him and Lily, and you've been sad." "I'm not sad." "You're sad the same way you were sad when Daddy left." The observation hit harder than it should have. Mia sat down next to her daughter, pulling her close. "I'm okay, Rosie. I promise." "Do you miss him?" "Yes. It's complicated." "Do you think he misses us?" "I don't know." Rosie was quiet for a moment, then looked up at Mia with those two wise eyes. "I think he does. I think he misses us a lot." "What makes you say that?" "Because he gave me a school. And you don't give people schools unless you really, really like them." Mia almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she kissed the top of Rosie's head and held her daughter close, wondering how a 5-year-old had figured out something she was still trying to deny. The week passed slowly. Mia went to work, came home, tried to pretend everything was normal. But the scholarship letter sat on the kitchen counter like an accusation, and every time she looked at it, she thought about Ethan, about the way he'd looked at her in the cafe, like he was barely holding himself together, about the things he'd said that she'd been too angry to really hear. On Saturday morning, she went to the park. Not their park. A different one, smaller, closer to the apartment. She sat on a bench while Rosie played, watching her daughter climb the jungle gym with the kind of fearless confidence only kids had. "Is this seat taken?" Mia looked up. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. "How did you know I'd be here?" she asked. "I didn't. I've been trying different parks all week." He gestured to the bench. "Can I sit?" She should say no. She didn't. He sat down, leaving a careful distance between them. For a while, neither of them spoke. Just watched Rosie play, her laughter carrying across the playground. "I talked to my lawyer," Ethan said finally, "about the scholarship. If you really don't want it, I can have it transferred to a different kid. Someone else who needs it." Mia's throat tightened. "You'd do that?" "If that's what you want." "What about Rosie?" "What about her?" "You'd just walk away? Pretend you never knew her?" Ethan turned to look at her. "Is that what you want?" "I don't know what I want." Mia pressed her hands together, trying to organize thoughts that wouldn't stay still. "I'm angry at you, for lying, for hiding, for making me feel like an idiot." "You're not an idiot." "I fell for someone who didn't exist." "I exist," Ethan said quietly. "Every conversation we had, every Sunday at the park, every terrible coffee I drank at your cafe, that was real. That was me. The version of you that wore borrowed boots and pretended to be normal. The version of me that got to be normal. For the first time in years." He ran a hand through his hair. "You think the money makes me happy? You think I enjoy board meetings and charity galas and people who only talk to me because they want something? Then why do it? Because it's all I know how to do. Because after my parents died, building the company was the only thing that made sense. And by the time I realized it wasn't enough, I was too far in to stop." He looked at her. "And then I met you, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to want something that wasn't on a spreadsheet." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm in love with you." The words dropped into the space between them like a bomb. Mia stared at him, her heart doing something complicated and painful in her chest. "Don't," she said. "Don't what?" "Don't say that. Don't make this harder than it already is." "It's the truth." "It's not fair." "I know." Ethan's voice cracked. "I know it's not fair. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I'm asking for one anyway, because I can't—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "I can't go back to the way things were before I met you. I can't pretend I don't care. You should have thought about that before you lied. I know. You should have trusted me. I know. Stop saying you know. Then tell me what to say." He turned to face her fully. "Tell me what I need to do to fix this, and I'll do it. Anything. I'll quit the company, give away the money, move into a shoebox apartment if that's what it takes. Just tell me what you need." "I need you to stop trying to fix everything," Mia said, her voice shaking. "I need you to understand that some things can't be fixed with money or grand gestures or promises you might not be able to keep." "Then what do I do?" "I don't know, Ethan. I don't have the answers." They sat in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. On the playground, Rosie called out, "Mom, watch this!" Mia looked up just in time to see her daughter reach the top of the jungle gym, arms spread wide like she'd conquered a mountain. "I see you, baby," Mia called back. "Be careful." When she turned back, Ethan was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "You're a good mother." "I'm doing my best." That's all anyone can do. Mia looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the expensive clothes and the careful composure to the man underneath, the one who sat alone on his birthday, the one who brought his daughter to emergency rooms and held her hand through surgery, the one who was just as scared and uncertain as she was, just better at hiding it. "I need time," she said finally. "Okay. I need to figure out if I can trust you again." "I understand. And I need you to stop trying to save me. I don't need saving." "I know." "Do you?" Ethan nodded. "I'm starting to." Mia stood, brushing off her jeans. "I should get Rosie home." "Can I ask you something first?" "Yeah." "The scholarship. Are you going to let her accept it?" Mia looked across the playground at her daughter, laughing and fearless and full of possibility. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I am." Relief washed over Ethan's face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for you." "I know." Mia called Rosie over and they walked back toward the bus stop together. Ethan stayed on the bench, watching them go. Just before they turned the corner, Rosie broke free from Mia's hand and ran back. "Ethan!" He looked up, startled. Rosie threw her arms around him in a hug that nearly knocked him off the bench. "I missed you," she said simply. Ethan's arms came around her slowly, carefully, like he was afraid she might break. "I missed you too, kiddo. Are you and Mom fighting?" "A little bit." "Are you going to stop?" "I hope so." Rosie pulled back, studying him with serious eyes. "You should say sorry. That's what I do when I make Mommy sad." "I did say sorry." "Then say it again. Sometimes you have to say it a lot before people believe you." Ethan smiled despite himself. "You're pretty smart. You know that?" "I know," Rosie grinned. "Tell Lily I said hi." "I will." She ran back to Mia, who was standing at the edge of the park with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Then they were gone, swallowed up by the city. Ethan sat on the bench for a long time after they left, Rosie's words echoing in his head. Sometimes you have to say it a lot before people believe you. He pulled out his phone and opened a new message. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I know I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it until you believe me." He sent it, then stood and walked back to his car. The response came 20 minutes later while he was sitting in traffic. "Mia, I'm trying to believe you. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something." Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan proved he meant it. He didn't show up at the cafe unannounced, didn't send gifts or make grand gestures. He just texted Mia every morning, simple messages that didn't ask for anything. "Ethan, hope you have a good shift today." "Ethan, Lily asked if Rosie likes dinosaurs. Apparently it's very important." "Ethan, saw a terrible cake at the grocery store and thought of you." Mia didn't always respond, but she read every message. And slowly, against her better judgment, the anger started to fade. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the beginning of something that might eventually get there. 3 weeks after their conversation at the park, Mia texted him. "Mia, Rosie wants to know if Lily can come over for a play date." The response was immediate. "Ethan, when?" "Mia, Saturday afternoon?" "Ethan, we'll be there." Saturday came, and Ethan showed up at Mia's apartment building at exactly 2 o'clock, Lily in tow. Mia buzzed them up, her stomach doing nervous flips. This was the first time he'd see where she lived. The peeling paint, the water stain on the ceiling, the kitchen that barely fit 2 people. All the things she'd been trying to hide. She almost called it off. But then there was a knock at the door, and it was too late. She opened it. Ethan stood in the hallway, Lily beside him holding a shoebox with holes punched in the lid. "Hi," he said. "Hi." They stared at each other for a beat too long. Lily broke the silence. "I brought Herman." "Who's Herman?" Mia asked. Lily opened the shoebox to reveal a small hermit crab. "My new pet. Dad says he's very low maintenance." "That's one way to put it," Ethan muttered. Rosie appeared at Mia's side, eyes wide. "You have a crab? Want to hold him?" "Yes!" The girls disappeared into Rosie's room, leaving Mia and Ethan alone in the doorway. "Come in," Mia said finally. Ethan stepped inside and Mia watched him take in the apartment, the cramped space, the mismatched furniture, the kitchen table covered in bills she hadn't had time to sort. He didn't say anything, just looked around with an expression she couldn't read. "It's not much," Mia said, defensive. "It's home." Something in the way he said it made her throat tight. She cleared some space on the couch and they sat down. For a while they listened to the girls laughing in the next room, the sound of childhood joy filling the small apartment. "Thank you for letting us come," Ethan said quietly. "Rosie's been asking for weeks." "What about you?" Mia looked at him. "What about me?" "Do you want me here?" She thought about lying, thought about keeping the walls up, protecting herself the way she always had. But she was tired of pretending. "Yeah," she said. "I do." Ethan's expression shifted. Relief, hope, something fragile and uncertain. "I'm still angry at you," Mia added. "I know. And I don't know if I can fully trust you again." "I know. But I want to try." Ethan reached across the couch, hand hovering near hers. "Can I?" Mia looked at his hand, then at his face, and made a decision. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady, and for the first time in weeks, something in Mia's chest unclenched. They sat there on the worn couch in her tiny apartment, hands linked, listening to their daughter's laugh, and it felt like the beginning of something neither of them had words for yet. Later, after Lily and Ethan had gone home and Rosie was asleep, Mia sat at the kitchen table with a blank piece of paper and a pen. She stared at it for a long time, trying to figure out what she wanted to say. Finally, she wrote, "Kindness doesn't need a name." The next morning, she brought the paper to the cafe and pinned it to the community board by the register. It stayed there for 3 days before Ethan saw it. He came in on a Tuesday evening, ordered his usual terrible coffee, and sat at his usual table. When Mia brought the mug over, he was smiling. "I saw your note," he said. "Yeah? Does that mean what I think it means?" "Depends on what you think it means." "That you're willing to give me another chance." Mia sat down across from him. "I'm willing to try. That's all I can promise." "That's enough." They sat there in the cafe where everything had started, and for the first time since that night on his birthday, Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, he'd found his way home. Spring arrived slowly, like it was testing the water before committing. The trees started budding, the air lost its sharp edge, and the park where they met every Sunday turned green again. Mia stopped working doubles. Not because she didn't need the money, she always needed the money, but because Ethan had quietly paid off 6 months of her rent through an anonymous donor program at a nonprofit she'd never heard of. She found out by accident when her landlord mentioned it, and she'd been furious for approximately 3 hours before realizing that anger required more energy than she had left. So she let it go. Not because she approved, but because fighting Ethan on every act of kindness was exhausting. And somewhere along the way, she'd started to understand that this was how he showed love, clumsily, excessively, with too much money and not enough words. It wasn't perfect, but neither was she. They fell into a rhythm that felt less like dating and more like building something from scratch. Sunday mornings at the park. Tuesday evenings at the cafe after Mia's shift. Thursdays, sometimes, when Lily had dance class, and Ethan would bring Rosie along so the girls could spin in terrible circles while pretending to be ballerinas. It wasn't the romance Mia had imagined as a younger woman. No grand declarations, no sweeping gestures. Just two broken people trying to figure out how to fit their jagged pieces together without drawing blood. Some days it worked. Some days it didn't. On a Wednesday in late April, Mia came home to find Ethan sitting on the steps outside her building, head in his hands. She stopped 3 feet away. "What happened?" He looked up, and she saw immediately that something was wrong. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. Lily's mother called. Mia's stomach dropped. What does she want? To see her. Says she's been in therapy, worked through her issues, wants to be part of Lily's life again. What did you say? I told her no. He laughed bitterly, and she threatened to sue for custody. Mia sat down beside him on the steps. Can she do that? Legally? Maybe. She signed away her rights, but a good lawyer could argue she was under duress, not of sound mind, whatever story sells. He pressed his palms against his eyes. I can't lose her, Mia. I can't. You won't. You don't know that. I know you're a good father. I know Lily loves you, and I know that any judge who spends 5 minutes with the two of you will see that. Ethan dropped his hands, looking at her with something raw and desperate. What if it's not enough? Then we fight harder. We? Mia took his hand. You're not doing this alone. He stared at their joined hands for a long moment, then pulled her close, burying his face in her shoulder. She felt him shake, not crying, just barely holding himself together. I'm scared, he whispered. I know. I don't know what to do. You do what you've always done. You show up for her every single day. That's all you can control. They sat there on the steps until the sun went down and the streetlights flickered on, and when Ethan finally pulled away, something had shifted in his expression. Thank you, he said. For what? For not running when things got hard. Mia smiled faintly. I thought about it. But you didn't. No, I didn't. The custody battle never materialized. 2 weeks after the phone call, Lily's mother sent a message through her lawyer. She'd reconsidered, decided it was too soon, wished them well. Ethan didn't believe it for a second. He suspected his own lawyers had made it very clear what kind of fight she'd be walking into. But he didn't ask. He just held Lily a little tighter and tried not to think about all the ways he could still lose her. Life kept moving. Rosie started at Westbridge Academy in the fall. The first week, she came home crying because the other kids had laughed at her shoes, knockoff sneakers from a discount store that looked nothing like the designer brands everyone else wore. Mia held her daughter while she sobbed and felt rage build in her chest. She called Ethan without thinking. Can you come over? What's wrong? Just come over. He was there in 20 minutes. Mia met him at the door, and the look on her face must have said everything because he didn't ask questions. Just walked inside and found Rosie curled up on the couch with Mr. Whiskers. Hey, kiddo, he said softly, sitting beside her. Rough day? Rosie nodded, not looking at him. Want to talk about it? She shook her head. Ethan glanced at Mia, who was standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed, jaw tight. The kids made fun of her shoes, Mia said flatly. Ethan's expression darkened. Which kids? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. You can't fix this by throwing money at it. I'm not trying to throw money at it. I'm trying to figure out who made my... He stopped himself. Who made Rosie cry so I can have a very polite conversation with their parents? Despite everything, Mia almost smiled. Ethan turned back to Rosie. You know what I did when I was your age and kids made fun of me? Rosie peeked up at him. What? I wore the ugliest shoes I could find, on purpose, just to see what they'd say. That's dumb. Completely. But it made me feel better, because if I was going to be different, I was going to own it. But I don't want to be different. I know. And that's okay too. He pulled something out of his pocket, a small box. But if you do want new shoes, these might help. Rosie opened the box to find a pair of sneakers exactly like the ones the other kids had been wearing. Mia's jaw tightened. Ethan, before you say anything, he cut her off. I already bought them. 3 weeks ago. I was going to give them to her for her birthday, but this seems more important. Rosie looked at the shoes, then at Ethan, then burst into tears again. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I don't want to be ungrateful. I just wanted to fit in. Hey, Ethan pulled her into a hug. You don't have to apologize. There's nothing wrong with wanting to fit in. Mom says we can't afford stuff like this. Your mom's right, but I can. And I want to. Is that okay? Rosie looked at Mia, uncertain. Mia wanted to say no. Wanted to tell Ethan that buying her daughter's happiness wasn't the answer. But she looked at Rosie's tear-stained face and realized something. This wasn't about pride. This was about a little girl who just wanted to feel normal. It's okay, baby, Mia said quietly. You can accept them. Rosie's face lit up. She threw her arms around Ethan, then scrambled off the couch to try on the shoes. When she disappeared into her room, Ethan stood and walked over to Mia. I'm sorry, he said. I should have asked first. Yeah, you should have. Are you mad? Mia sighed. I don't know. Ask me tomorrow. He smiled faintly. Fair enough. That night, after Rosie was asleep and Ethan had gone home, Mia sat at the kitchen table and cried. Not because she was sad, because she was realizing that letting someone help didn't make her weak. It just made her human. The months blurred together in a way that felt both fast and slow. Summer came. Rosie and Lily spent entire days at the community pool, turning brown under the sun and coming home smelling like chlorine. Mia picked up shifts when she could, saved what little money she managed to hold on to, and tried not to think too hard about the fact that she was falling in love with a man who still sometimes felt like a stranger. Ethan sold one of his cars. Mia didn't ask why until he showed up at her apartment with the check, made out to her, more money than she'd seen in her entire life. What is this? She asked. The start of Rosie's college fund. Ethan, I know, you're going to say it's too much, that you can't accept it. But I already set it up, and the account's in her name, so technically it's not even yours to refuse. Mia stared at the check, then at him. You're impossible. I've been told. I'm serious. So am I. He stepped closer. Mia, I know you want to do this on your own. I know you don't want to need anyone, but you don't have to prove anything to me. You're already the strongest person I know. Then why do you keep trying to fix everything? Because I love you. And watching you struggle when I can help feels like holding my breath underwater. I know it's your fight. I know you didn't ask for my help. But I'm asking you, please, let me do this. Not because you need it, but because I need it. Mia looked at him for a long time. Then she took the check. Thank you, she said quietly. Ethan's shoulders sagged with relief. You're welcome. In August, Ethan's birthday came around again. This time Mia was ready. She closed the cafe early, sent the staff home, and spent 2 hours baking a cake from scratch. It came out lopsided and slightly burnt on one side, but she didn't care. At 7 o'clock, Ethan arrived with Lily, and Mia had invited them not to the cafe, but to her apartment. Rosie answered the door, practically vibrating with excitement. We made you a party, she announced. Ethan stepped inside to find the small living room decorated with handmade streamers and a banner that read, Happy Birthday in Rosie's careful handwriting. On the kitchen table sat the lopsided cake, a single candle stuck in the center. What is this? Ethan asked, his voice rough. A do-over, Mia said, stepping forward. Last year, you spent your birthday alone in a cafe with a stranger. This year, you get to spend it with us. Ethan looked at the cake, at the decorations, at Rosie and Lily giggling in the corner, and something in his expression cracked. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. They sat around the small table, 4 people crammed into a space meant for 2, and sang the worst rendition of Happy Birthday that had ever been sung. Ethan blew out the candle, and Rosie immediately demanded to know what he wished for. I can't tell you, he said. It won't come true. That's a dumb rule. Completely. They ate the terrible cake, dry and too sweet and absolutely perfect, and talked about nothing and everything until Lily and Rosie fell asleep on the couch, tangled together like they'd known each other forever. Mia and Ethan sat at the table, the apartment quiet except for the sound of 2 little girls breathing. Thank you, Ethan said finally. For what? For this. For them. For not giving up on me when you should have. Who says I should have? Most people would have. I'm not most people. I know. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Mia, Wait. She stood, walked to the counter, and came back with a small box. I have something for you. Ethan opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive, just a plain band with a single word engraved on the inside. Found. He stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at her with eyes that were too bright. Mia, it's not a proposal, she said quickly. It's just a reminder that you're not alone anymore, that you've been found. Ethan slid the ring onto his finger, and it fit perfectly. I love you, he said, voice breaking. I know I've said it before, but I need you to hear it again. I love you. I love Rosie. I love the life we're building, even when it's messy and complicated, and nothing like what I thought I wanted. I love you too, Mia said, and meant it. They sat there at the kitchen table, hands linked, while their daughter slept and the city hummed outside the window. And for the first time in longer than either of them could remember, the future didn't feel quite so terrifying. Fall arrived with a cold snap that caught everyone off guard. The leaves turned fast, the air went sharp, and Mia found herself thinking about the year that had passed, about the man who'd sat alone in her cafe, and the life they'd built from nothing. On a Sunday morning in late September, they all went to the park. Not the small one near Mia's apartment, the big one across town, with the wide open fields and the trees that had already started losing their leaves. Lily and Rosie ran ahead, chasing each other through the grass, while Ethan and Mia followed at a slower pace. Rosie made something for you, Mia said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Ethan unfolded it to find a drawing, stick figures of 4 people holding hands under a smiling sun. Underneath, in careful letters, Rosie had written, Our family. He stared at it for a long time. She asked me last night if you were going to be her dad, Mia said quietly. I told her that was up to you. Ethan looked at her. What did she say? She said she hoped you'd say yes. And what do you hope? Mia stopped walking, turning to face him fully. I hope you know that you already are. To her. To both of us. Ethan's throat worked. I want to be. More than anything. Then be. Ahead of them, Rosie turned around and called out, Ethan, come play with us. Ethan looked at Mia, then at the drawing in his hand, then at the 2 little girls waiting for him in the grass. Go, Mia said, smiling. They're waiting. He jogged over to them, and within seconds, all 3 of them were running through the leaves, laughing like it was the easiest thing in the world. Mia stood there watching, the autumn sun warm on her face, and thought about how far they'd come. A year ago, she'd been alone, working herself to exhaustion, convinced that asking for help was the same as admitting defeat. Now, she had this, a man who loved her, a daughter who was thriving, a future that felt less like survival and more like living. It wasn't perfect. There were still bills to pay, still moments of doubt, still days when she wondered if she was making the right choices. But she'd learned something over the past year. Perfection wasn't the point. The point was showing up, trying, letting people in even when it was scary, building something worth holding on to, even if it meant risking your heart in the process. Ethan jogged back over, slightly out of breath, his hair a mess and his face flushed. Rosie says we have to stay until she finds the biggest leaf in the entire park. That could take a while. I'm aware. Mia smiled. Good thing we've got time. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together, and they walked over to where the girls were crouched in a pile of leaves, debating the merits of various sizes. As the afternoon stretched on, the sun began to sink lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Rosie ran over, holding a leaf the size of her hand. Look, I found it! That's definitely the biggest one, Ethan agreed solemnly. It's for you, for your birthday, even though your birthday was last month. Ethan took the leaf carefully, like it was made of glass. Thank you, Rosie, I love it. Do you want to know what I wished for? She asked. I thought wishes were secret. This one's not. She looked between him and Mia, her face serious. I wish that you'd stay. Forever. Ethan knelt down so he was eye level with her. You know what? What? That's what I wished for too. Rosie threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him over. Lily joined in, wrapping her arms around both of them, and Mia stood there watching, her daughter, his daughter, the man who'd walked into her cafe looking for something he couldn't name and somehow found it anyway. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan stood and looked at Mia. I want to ask you something, he said. Okay. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box, and Mia's heart stopped. Ethan, wait. Before you say anything, I need you to know that this isn't because I think you need me. It's because I need you. Because the last year has been the best year of my life, and I don't want to go back to the way things were before I knew you. He opened the box to reveal a simple ring, nothing extravagant, nothing showy, just a band that matched the one she'd given him. Mia Turner, will you marry me? Mia looked at the ring, then at him, then at Rosie and Lily watching with wide eyes. She thought about all the reasons she should say no, the complications, the differences, the fact that a year ago she didn't even know his real name. But then she thought about the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room, the way he showed up every single time, even when it was hard, the way he loved her daughter like she was his own. And she realized something. Love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone willing to stay when things got messy. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Ethan's face broke into the kind of smile she'd never seen before, wide and unguarded and absolutely real. He slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Rosie and Lily erupted into cheers, jumping up and down and hugging each other like they'd won the lottery. Ethan pulled Mia close, and she let herself sink into him, breathing in the moment. I love you, he whispered. I love you too. They stood there in the middle of the park, surrounded by falling leaves and laughter, and it felt like the beginning of something neither of them had known they were looking for. Not a fairy tale, just a life, messy and imperfect and absolutely worth fighting for. Winter came early that year. The wedding was small, just family, which turned out to be exactly 4 people and a hermit crab named Herman. They got married in the same park where they'd spent so many Sundays, under a sky that threatened snow but held off just long enough. Rosie was the flower girl. Lily was the ring bearer. They both took their jobs very seriously and only argued twice about who got to stand closer to Mia. Ethan wore a suit, but not the expensive kind, just something simple that made him look like himself. Mia wore a dress she'd found at a consignment shop, white, simple, nothing fancy. When the officiant asked if they had vows, Ethan pulled out a piece of paper. I wasn't going to write anything, he said, voice shaking slightly. But then I realized I've spent most of my life not saying the things that mattered, so here goes. He cleared his throat. Mia, a year ago, I walked into a cafe on the worst birthday of my life, and you gave me cake. You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything, but you saw someone who needed kindness, and you gave it without asking for anything in return. You've been giving ever since, your time, your patience, your love, and I know I don't deserve it. I know I've made mistakes, but I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the gift you've given me, not just your love, but the chance to be part of your family, to be Rosie's dad, to be the person you come home to. I promise to show up, to be honest, to love you even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because you've taught me that love isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. And I promise, I will always be present for you. By the time he finished, Mia was crying. The officiant looked at her. Do you have vows? Mia wiped her eyes, laughing. I didn't write anything down because I knew I'd forget it the second I saw him. She looked at Ethan. But I'll try. Ethan, you walked into my life when I'd convinced myself I didn't need anyone, and you proved me wrong in the most annoying way possible. You were persistent and stubborn and way too generous for your own good. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being annoyed and started being grateful. Because you didn't just see me, you saw Rosie. You saw the life we were building, and you didn't try to fix it. You just tried to be part of it. And that's all I've ever wanted. Not someone to save me, just someone to stay. So I promise to let you stay, to let you in, even when it's scary, to build a life with you that's messy and imperfect and ours. I promise to love you, not because you're perfect, but because you're real, and that's more than enough. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Ethan cupped Mia's face in his hands and kissed her like they were the only 2 people in the world. Rosie and Lily cheered, and somewhere in the distance, the first snow of the season began to fall. The reception was at the cafe. Mia's boss had offered to close for the day, and they'd pushed the tables together to make room for the 6 people who came. Danielle, Mrs. Chen, Ethan's assistant who'd become a friend, and a lawyer who cried through the entire ceremony. They ate cake, this time made by a professional, and danced to music playing from someone's phone, and laughed until their sides hurt. As the evening wore on, Ethan pulled Mia aside. I have something for you, he said. You already gave me a ring. This is different. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a deed to the cafe. Mia stared at it. What is this? I bought it, the building, the business, all of it. Ethan, before you get mad, let me explain. The owner was selling. You mentioned once that you wished you could buy it, turn it into something more. So now you can. It's yours. Do whatever you want with it. Keep it the same. Change everything. I don't care. It's your decision. Mia looked at the deed, then at him, then back at the deed. You bought me a cafe. Technically, I bought us a cafe. That's insane. Probably. She started laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly, absurdly Ethan that she couldn't do anything else. You're impossible, she said. You've mentioned that before. I'm going to keep mentioning it. I'm counting on it. She kissed him, and he kissed her back, and somewhere in the background, Rosie announced very loudly that grown-ups were gross. The night ended late. Rosie and Lily fell asleep in a booth, curled up together like puppies. Mia and Ethan sat at the table by the window, the same one where they'd first met, and watched the snow fall outside. Do you ever think about that night? Mia asked. Every day? What do you think about? How close I came to not coming here. How easy it would have been to just go home, spend my birthday alone, convince myself it didn't matter. He looked at her. And how different my life would be if I had. Mine too. They sat in comfortable silence, the cafe dark except for the string lights Danielle had hung for the reception. Can I tell you something? Ethan said. Always. When I made that wish the night we met, I didn't actually think it would come true. What did you wish for? He smiled. To not feel alone anymore. Mia's throat tightened. Did it come true? Yeah. He laced his fingers through hers. It did. She rested her head on his shoulder, and they sat there watching the snow, two people who'd started with nothing and built everything. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent and relentless. But inside the cafe, time felt suspended. Just a man and a woman and two little girls who'd become a family in the spaces between the hard parts. Not because it was easy, but because they'd chosen each other over and over, even when it hurt. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Showing up, staying, loving someone enough to let them see all your broken pieces, and trusting they won't leave when they do. Mia lifted her head, looking at Ethan in the dim light. I'm glad you came to the cafe that night. Me too. Even though the cake was terrible, especially because the cake was terrible. She smiled, and he smiled back, and somewhere in the booth, Rosie mumbled something in her sleep about dinosaurs. Life wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and full of moments that didn't fit neatly into boxes. But it was theirs, and that made it perfect enough.